Welcome to my class on HSC English first paper. Now dear students, in today's class I will explain lesson 2 of unit 2. The title of unit 2 is Greatest Scientific Achievements. In our previous class I explained lesson 1, and in today's class I will explain lesson 2. And the title of lesson 2 is Science and Technology Against an Age-Old Disease. Basically this lesson is focused on leprosy, a kind of age-old disease. Now, in the previous class, in lesson number 1, we saw, internet, cell phone, satellite, and other scientific achievements of the last century and this century as well. Now, this unit, unit 2, Greatest Scientific Achievements. This unit, which consists of 4 lessons. This unit is basically focused on the scientific achievements of the previous century and the achievements we witnessed over the last couple of decades. Now, I said in the previous class that this unit is very important for paragraph writing as well, because at the HSC level, paragraph writing of first paper is related with different lessons. Now, apart from question answer and multiple choice tasks, we have one important task at the HSC level, which is flowchart writing. And when you will start practicing flowchart writing, you will feel the necessity of having knowledge on phrases as well. So in today's class, I will just give you a preliminary idea about phrase, and we will have a separate class, an individual class on clause and phrase. But in today's class, I will just give you some initial ideas, so that when I will explain this lesson and the lessons that I will explain in future of other units, so that I can explain different phrases as well when I will explain the lesson. That is why I will start discussion on clauses and phrases in today's class. And there are 2 ways I would like to show you that. There are 2 ways to explain grammatical rules and grammatical items. The first method of discussing grammatical items is inductive method and deductive method. Now, inductive method and deductive method, basically what you practice, or the way the teachers make the students practice grammar, basically they follow deductive method. Deductive method means that it starts with rules and then comes the examples. On the other hand, inductive method, it starts with examples and then comes the rules. So I will follow this one. I will just show you some examples and then I will gradually tell you the rules of phrases and clauses. Why? Because when we will start reading the lesson, then this method will work. It will be more effective for us. I repeat again, we will follow inductive method of explaining. When I will explain phrases and clauses, I will start with examples and then I will go to the rules. Now, if we write an example, then it will be much easier for us to understand the difference between these 2 ways or methods of teaching grammar. Now, let me write a sentence, and I want to show you clause and phrase. Now, I saw a man who was standing at the door. Now you see that it's a sentence, it's a complex sentence, Now, how many clauses are there? I saw a man, this is one clause, and then we see another clause. Now, what is a clause? Dear students, a clause is a part of sentence, and there are few words. Clause consists of few words, and it's a part of a sentence. But what is very important for clause, that a clause should have a finite verb. Over here you see that I saw a man, this saw is finite verb, and that was standing, this is also a finite verb. What is finite verb? Finite verb is that kind of verb which changes with the change of subject and tense. Now, instead of I saw a man, this one is also a clause, and this one is another clause. Now over here was standing. This verb is also finite verb, and this verb saw is also finite verb. Now in a clause there must be a finite verb. A finite verb, I again repeat, is a verb that changes with the change of subject and with the change of tense. Now this if I change the sentence, I see a man who is standing at the door. I can do it. I can change the tense. Now the difference between a phrase and a clause, the basic difference between a phrase and a clause, that a phrase doesn't have any finite verb. A phrase may have a verb, but that verb has to be non-finite. And what is a non-finite verb and what is a finite verb? I have already mentioned that a finite verb changes with the change of subject and tense, but a non-finite verb doesn't change. Now, can we make any change in this sentence? And look, this one is also a clause and this one is a clause. This one is, the first one is principal clause and the second one is subordinate clause. Basically a clause is divided into two ways, principal clause and subordinate clause. Principal clause is basically the clause which is independent, which can clarify or which can express its meaning independently. And dependent clause is that kind of clause which depends on the principal clause for its meaning. Now you can easily understand, I saw a man, this clause can express its meaning clearly. On the other hand, who was standing at the door, this clause cannot express its meaning clearly because it has to depend on this principal clause. Now this subordinate clause or this dependent clause can also be divided into three types of clauses: noun clause, adjective clause and adverbial clause. These divisions I will discuss in my next classes, not in today's class, because I want to share some ideas with you regarding phrase as well. Now instead of clause, can we make some changes in this sentence and create a phrase? Let's see. I saw a man who was standing at the door. I am deleting this one. I saw a man standing at the door. Now dear students, notice I saw a man standing at the door. It becomes simple sentence because now it has got only one clause. And in the previous sentence there were two clauses, one principal clause and the other was dependent clause. Now we see that the second clause, it has been transformed into a phrase. I saw a man standing at the door. Now this standing at the door becomes a phrase because the verb standing, now it becomes non-finite. Why? Because it will not change with the change of subject or with the change of tense. Look, I saw a man, if I say I see a man standing at the door, it will not change. I can see a man standing at the door, it will not change. I saw a man standing at the door, it will not change. Now this phrase, you can say that this phrase is basically qualifying the phrase man or this man. Now you can say, since it is qualifying a noun, you can say it's an adjective phrase. But remember one thing, there is always a confusion. There is ing with the verb stand. Now in some grammar books you will see that they consider this one as present participle phrase. Now basically in terms of structure it is present participle phrase, okay, but in terms of function, what function is it playing? It is playing the function of an adjective, so you can also call it an adjective phrase as well. But remember one thing, in a phrase you will not have any finite verb, it's a non-finite verb. That is the thing that you must remember. Now there are different types of phrases: noun phrase, adjective phrase, present participle phrase, past participle phrase, infinitive phrase, verb phrase. There is also prepositional phrase, adverbial phrases. Now there are different types of phrases, and these phrases are also important for our understanding of different lessons as well. But remember one thing that I said at the very beginning, that I will take an extra class on clauses and phrases. But since we will need the knowledge of phrase for our understanding of the lesson and for flowchart, that's why I just gave you an initial idea. And when I will read the lesson, at the time of reading the lesson, I will explain and I will give you the examples that what about the different types of phrases. When I will read, I will tell you that this phrase belongs to the group of adverbial phrase, or this phrase is basically adjective phrase, or this phrase is a present participle phrase or past participle phrase. I repeat again that when I will read the lesson, when I will explain the lesson, I will give you the examples of different types of phrases, and at that time your ideas will be clearer. Now remember one thing, the difference between clause and phrase is that a clause should have a finite verb and a phrase doesn't have any finite verb, and there are different types of phrases as well. This clause and phrase are also very important for transformation and other grammatical items as well. So dear students, let's start reading the lesson, lesson 2 of unit 2, and discuss different types of items and ideas. So let's start our discussion of slide. Okay, now we are starting the lesson. Unit 2, I have already said, the unit is about greatest scientific achievements. And listen to the title of lesson 2 is Science and Technology Against an Age-Old Disease. And I have said that it's about leprosy. Now, warm-up activity as usual. What infectious diseases have been recorded in our country? Now you can discuss it with your classmates, you can discuss it with your friends, that what infectious diseases have been recorded in our country. Now look, the aim or the objective of warm-up activity, that is to make you familiar and is to get you adjusted with the lesson that you are going to read. Now, every reader has a kind of expectation. When he or she reads the title of any lesson, he or she tries to predict that what's going to happen in that lesson. So that's a warm-up activity, and gazing what's going to happen is very important. So you can discuss the infectious diseases that you see in your country. What are some important advancements in medical science that you know about? So you can also discuss with your friends about the important advancements in medical science. Basically, you can discuss regarding MRI, CT scan, and a PET scan, and there are other advancements that have taken place over the last couple of decades. So you can discuss these issues. And then, how do advancements in medical science and technology help fight fatal diseases? So lastly, you can also discuss with your friend regarding the changes, how these developments are helping people to fight fatal diseases. Development in medical science, how this development is helping people to fight those fatal diseases. Now, keeping these things in mind, if you discuss these issues with your classmates, with your friends, then naturally you will come across some words. Naturally, idea will develop in your mind, with which, if you start reading the lesson, then it will be more effective for your understanding. Now, read the following text. You all know that we are going to read that text, and the speaker is Steve Reed, who is the founder. A person will tell the story. There is a speaker, and the person is President and Chief Scientist Officer of Infectious Disease Research Institute. The speaker is basically is the founder and president, and chief scientific officer of Infectious Disease Research Institute, IDRI. So IDRI is an institute that works on infectious diseases, and the speaker is president and chief scientist over there. IDRI is a non-profit organization based in Seattle, United States of America. So it's an institution, it's an organization which doesn't make any profit, and it conducts research on infectious disease. It develops novel and advanced products for the diagnosis, prevention of treatment of neglected disease related to poverty. So it works on poverty. When I started working on the research and science of leprosy more than a decade ago, people thought this chronic infectious disease
would eliminate itself and burn out over time. So when I started working on the research, the speaker is saying that when the speaker started working on the research and science of leprosy, so we are going to deal with this disease, leprosy, more than a decade ago, and this research started a decade ago. People thought this chronic infectious disease would eliminate itself and burn out over time. So when the research started, it was a common concept among the people that this disease would eliminate itself and burn out over time. That means no medicine would be required. Now, this was a kind of superstition among the people, and you know that regarding leprosy, there is a kind of superstition that since if a person suffers from leprosy, it is mostly assumed or it is mostly gazed or thought that considered that he or she must have committed some sin, but it's purely kind of prejudice and superstition. Now this the speaker also says that there was a tendency, there was a concept among the people that the disease would eliminate itself and burn out over time, that the disease would go over time, so no medicine would be required for that. Now, I said that when I was discussing a clause and phrase, I said that you will find some clauses as well, and I will help you to identify those phrases. Now, in this first sentence, if we start identifying phrases, now look at the first line, started working. This is a phrase on the research, started working. If I consider started working on the research, then you can say it's verb phrase. If I consider working on the research, then you can say that this is present participle phrase. On the research, then this is prepositional phrase or adverbial phrase. The research, then this is noun phrase. Now you will see, you will notice that there are different types of phrases in you will come across. And what is our motive? Our motive is to identify phrase according to question. So if somebody asks that what about leprosy, that whether you find any idea about leprosy, in the first sentence, no, not about leprosy but about the research, we get some points. So the speaker started working on the research. It's a phrase, started working on the research, it's a phrase. But when we divide the phrase, we see that a phrase can be divided into other phrases as well. So what we need to learn, that a phrase doesn't contain any finite verb. So started working on the research, started working, non-finite verb over here. Working on the research, working is non-finite. On the research, there is no verb at all. The research, there is no verb at all, it's noun phrase. What is noun phrase? A phrase that works like a noun is noun phrase. What is an adjective phrase? A phrase that does the function of an adjective is an adjective phrase. What is verb phrase? A phrase that does the work of a verb. So this is how you have to identify the phrases and the names of the phrases. Now let's go to the second sentence. We are talking about leprosy, and at the same time we are trying to identify phrases basically, because we will need phrases in order to answer flowchart task. We didn't have time for that. Why? So the speaker says that they didn't have sufficient time. Nearly 250,000 new cases of leprosy are diagnosed every year, because huge number of people were being diagnosed with leprosy. That's why they didn't have sufficient time. And many more go undetected, and there were many people who went undetected. They didn't even have any idea that they were suffering from leprosy. Approximately 10% of new cases occur in children. So around 10% cases basically they occur in children. Even though it's associated with biblical times, The idea, the term, the word leprosy is also present in Bible. And that is why I said at the beginning that the word leprosy has an association with sin and committing sin. And it is considered that if someone commits sin, then he suffers from leprosy. Leprosy remains a problem in the modern era and was reported in 130 countries worldwide. So during the time of Bible, I mean during the time of the presence of Bible, leprosy is biblical time. Since biblical time, leprosy is present in this world, and it was detected in 130 countries worldwide. It's most prevalent in a number of countries throughout Africa, and where it is most dominating in Africa, in Asia, and South America. So these are the continents where we see the presence of leprosy in a large scale. Symptoms include progressive and permanent damage to the skin. So now we get to know about the symptoms and signs of leprosy. What are the signs and symptoms of leprosy? The symptoms include progressive, I mean developing and permanent damage to the skin. So it creates damage to the skin, nerves, limbs, and eyes. But they can take several years to appear. So it starts, affecting different organs secretly and silently, and it takes several years to appear. So the person doesn't know that he is suffering from leprosy, but he is basically a victim of leprosy. And why? Because the disease takes several years to come out. And when the person comes to know that he is suffering from leprosy, the disease advances a lot, making the disease hard to diagnose at an early stage. And that is the problem, that why we cannot diagnose leprosy at an early stage, because when we diagnose it, we see that it has already the disease has gone too far to be treated easily. So that's why this disease is very difficult to contain. Even worse, leprosy comes with a stigma. I have said already that leprosy comes with a stigma, means that it's a kind of, it's always considered as a kind of, a result of a sin. So that's why it becomes a stigma. For now, comes with a stigma, it's a phrase. With a stigma, it's again a phrase. A stigma is also a phrase. Comes with a stigma, verb phrase. With a stigma, is prepositional phrase or adverbial phrase. A stigma, noun phrase. These phrases don't contain any verb, remember. So if someone asks you, if the teacher asks you that can you identify a phrase from this passage that directly deals with leprosy, then you can say yes sir, I can. The comes with a stigma, it's a phrase that directly deals with or directly connected with leprosy, or with a stigma or a stigma. Unlike most other diseases, leprosy results in isolation. Now you see another phrase is there, results in isolation. This is also directly related to leprosy. So if a person is diagnosed with leprosy, then people forsake him, people don't mix with him. It results in isolation. He becomes isolated, alienated. He becomes separated from the society. So in other diseases, people don't isolate the person, but in leprosy, the person is being isolated. Now, at present, you know, coronavirus. In case of coronavirus, the society has come to know new words like isolation. So this isolation, you now understand what is isolation. Isolation means staying separately, quarantine, isolation. These words are very familiar nowadays. So leprosy is that kind of disease. It's not that much contagious like coronavirus, but still, if a person suffers from leprosy, he or she is isolated from the society. Nobody mixes with him, because they think that since it's a contagious disease, it can spread to other people. So the person is isolated. As people with leprosy are often shunned, shunned means separated, and nobody mixes with them, given up. So nobody mixes with a person who suffers from leprosy. The good news, however, is that we now have the key scientific solutions and momentum as well as key collaborations to finally have the opportunity to eliminate leprosy. But the positive news is that we are also waiting for positive news of coronavirus, but not yet we have got any that much positive news. Some positive news we have got. We know that vaccine is going to be invented, but we don't know when it's going to be invented, when it's going to be marketed, and when it will be available for the people. But in the field of leprosy, there is some good news because the scientific solutions and momentum, that means a kind of achievement, we have noticed, we have witnessed. Collaborations to finally have the opportunity to eliminate, that means eradicate, to remove leprosy. So some medicines have also been invented. I could not have said this 10 years ago. So the speaker says that the speaker could not tell this 10 years ago. At IDRI, we are also attacking leprosy in two different ways. So the speaker says that they are attacking, that means they are treating leprosy in two different ways. Now let's see what are the ways. First, by developing a fast, easy-to-use test that provides an early diagnosis of infection before clinical symptoms. You know, this is very important for any contagious disease, even in case of coronavirus. You know, identifying or the person at an early stage is very important. So, they have developed a fast and easy-to-use test to diagnose early because before clinical symptoms mean that you can say a person is suffering from leprosy by looking at him because the symptoms are clear on the body. So before the clinical symptoms, they have developed a kind of test and they can say they can now tell that the person is suffering from a leprosy or not, even before the clinical symptoms, such as nerve damage begin to appear. And it's very important to diagnose a person whether the person is suffering from leprosy or not before the clinical symptoms, because otherwise the person's nerves will be damaged permanently. So that's why it's very important to identify a person whether the person is suffering from leprosy or not before the clinical symptoms coming out. This new approach is far superior to the traditional method of diagnosis. So this new approach is superior, far superior, and it's advanced to the traditional method. The traditional method was basically the clinical assessment, and which has generally involved clinical and or microscopic assessment, and the traditional method was just to look at a patient and to try to identify whether there is any sign or symptom on the body sign or symptom of leprosy on the body or not, or some microscopic assessment. IDRI is also developing a companion test so that we can identify which people will likely progress to the disease and to determine the appropriate course of treatment. So this is also very important. IDRI is also developing a companion test. They call this test a companion test, so that they are now identifying people who have got the possibility to be affected by this disease. This is also very important. So they can now tell that which person has got the possibility to be affected by leprosy. So this is very important. You know why important? Because if a person can be informed earlier that the person has the possibility to be affected or to be a victim of leprosy, then the course of medication can be started much earlier. Second, by developing a vaccine that can be used therapeutically in conjunction with antibiotics to shorten therapy. Now, this is the second way they are treating the leprosy patients. They have developed a vaccine, and this vaccine is used not only simply as a vaccine. You know, vaccine is used so that a person is not, you know, doesn't become a victim of that disease. But sometimes the vaccine is used as a kind of therapy. And this vaccine of leprosy is used as a kind of therapy combined with antibiotics. Now, the vaccine is also given and antibiotics are also given to shorten the therapy, and that's how they treat the patients. So even if a person is already infected by leprosy, then the person is still given vaccine, and he is or she is also given antibiotics so that the disease disappears quickly. So that's how the treatment continues. IDRI's diagnostic tools would be used to identify infected individuals, and IDRI's vaccine would then be used on a targeted basis for treatment of the patient as well as to immunize family members and close contacts. Now, this is very important that IDRI, I have already said, their diagnostic tools now would be used to identify infected individuals. So, they are using their tools to identify the people who are already infected. And IDRI's vaccine would then be used on a targeted basis for treatment of the patient. And if a person is diagnosed with leprosy, then the patient will be given the treatment. Apart from that, even the family members of that person will be immunized or will be given the vaccine. And the person who has come to the close contact of the victim or of the infected person, that person will also be immunized. So this is, I am repeating again, they are doing it in a very effective way because they are trying to identify the infected person, and once they find out the infected person, they are starting the treatment. What is this treatment? They are using the vaccine and antibiotics. At the same time, when they are starting the treatment with the infected persons, they are at the same time giving vaccine to the family members of the infected person and to the people who have come in close contact with the infected person. This treatment and prevention strategy has been significantly bolstered by support from some pharmaceutical giants that donate the currently used antibiotics. And this treatment has gained pace, has gained momentum, and significantly bolstered. That means the pace has been doubled. It has gained pace. And who has supported this treatment? Some pharmaceutical giants or some pharmaceutical companies, big companies, they are donating the currently used antibiotics. So that's how the treatment is going across the globe. The most exciting part of this breakthrough is the fact that we are now right on the course of human clinical trials after a decade of leprosy vaccine development. The Food and Drug Administration will initially oversee the multi-stage trials in the USA before they move on to the Philippines, India, and Brazil. Now, you know that even now we see that vaccine takes time for coming to the market because clinical trials are very important. Now, unless you make some trials, you cannot identify, you cannot say that a vaccine is effective for a particular disease. And that is why you know that the vaccine of coronavirus is yet to come because the clinical trials are going on. Around 100 researches are being conducted, are going on in order to find out vaccine for coronavirus. So why it's taking time? It's taking time because the clinical trials are going on, and it's a good news that almost a decade has already gone after the starting of clinical trials. Look at the sentence again. On the course of human clinical trials after a decade of leprosy vaccine development. So almost a decade has gone. So we have got enough time to say whether the vaccine is working or not. The Food and Drug Administration will initially oversee the multi-stage trials. So not a single trial. Multi-stage trials are necessary. In the USA, it has been done before they move on to Philippines, India, and Brazil. These are the countries which are badly affected by leprosy. Global technology has been an integral part of our quest to eliminate leprosy. And quest means the search. To eliminate means eradicate or remove. So, global technology has been an integral part. Now, our quest, that means our search or our effort to eliminate leprosy, has been enhanced by the global technology. So global technology is helping us to eliminate leprosy, and it has become an inseparable part, an inseparable part of our quest to eliminate leprosy. Now, again, look, what kind of initiative we see over here, and you also see some phrases over here. An integral part, this is noun phrase, of our quest. Again, talking about phrase, that when we will read the lessons, sometimes we will also try to identify the phrases of our quest. This is prepositional phrase. To eliminate leprosy, this is infinitive phrase, because to is infinitive, and then we see the verb, the base form of the verb. So whenever you will read the lesson, you will try to identify the phrases. It's not that all the phrases will be necessary for flowchart writing, but some of the phrases will be necessary for flowchart writing. We will practice flowchart, definitely. I said we will practice flowchart, and I will tell you, I will explain how to find out those phrases. But right now we are just haphazardly trying to find out some phrases whenever we get an important sentence about leprosy, particularly in this lesson. The rapid diagnostic test for leprosy infection, for example, was developed in conjunction with a Brazilian company. So the rapid diagnostic test for leprosy infection, diagnosis is very important. And the rapid diagnostic test for leprosy infection, for example, was developed. And this test was developed by that institute in conjunction with a Brazilian company. So that institute, IDRI, and Brazilian company, and they combinedly they tried to develop a diagnostic test. And you must have noticed, again, I am giving the reference of coronavirus, that there are different universities, there are different research centers and institutes who are working in collaboration with other pharmaceutical companies as well. This company combined IDRI's leprosy diagnostic antigens with a smartphone-based platform. So the diagnostic antigens are very important for the diagnostic test. So IDRI's leprosy diagnostic antigens with a smartphone based platform. So even the technology of smartphone is being also used for the diagnosis of leprosy. So the antigens are also important, and the smartphone technology is also important. That standardizes the ability to accurately interpret results and get a quantitative value. Why the smartphone technology is important, smartphone based platform is important? In order to quantify the result. Qualitative, there are different types of analysis, there are different types of researches as well. Qualitative research is one kind of research, quantitative research is another kind of research. Qualitative value is one kind of value, quantitative value is different kind of value. In the field of scientific research, quantitative value is highly important. Why it is important? That they are going to standardize the test, and if they go to standardize the test, then knowing the quantitative value is very important, because it's a matter of life. Now it's a question of life. The test requires just a single drop of blood mixed with a developing and reagent. So what do they need to test whether a person is infected by leprosy or not? They just need a drop of blood and the reagent. The appearance of two lines indicates that the person is positive for leprosy. So when they're using the kit, if there are two lines, then the person is suffering from leprosy. From there, the information from the phone is pushed to the person's medical records. So from the phone technology, smartphone technology, the result is directly sent to the medical records of that person. In these developed countries, every person's medical history is being recorded. So since over here we see that smartphone technology is also being used, so we see that if a person is suffering from leprosy, then, or even if he may not suffer from leprosy, but the result of that test is directly sent to the medical records of that person's life or of that person. So this is very interesting. That is the smartphone technology, a reagent, and antigen. This so they are technology has been used in such an effective way in the field of leprosy diagnosis and treatment. So we can also hope that this sort of technology will be helpful to diagnose coronavirus and at the same time to treat coronavirus infected persons. We are hoping for that as well. People around the world now believe we will soon have the tools to finally eliminate leprosy. Now, the people have started believing that we will be able to eliminate, to remove leprosy from the world. The next step is making this disease disappear. So, what will be our next step? Is making this disease disappear. Now, let's look at the last sentence of this paragraph. Now, dear students, when I'm identifying some phrases, don't think that these are the only phrases which are present in this lesson. There are many phrases. There are plenty of phrases in this lesson, but sometimes just taking one or two phrases to make you prepared, to make you familiar with phrase, so that gradually when I will explain phrases, when I will teach you flowchart writing, so that you can at least understand, at least you can gauge that this is a phrase. Now, making this disease disappear is also a kind of phrase. So you have to remember these things. Now we have concluded the passage. Now let's look at some of the questions as we did in the previous class. What are some of the symptoms of leprosy? You must have noticed the symptoms, damages of nerves, now the problem on the skin. So in the previous class I also explained that it's expected that you complete your answer within two sentences. Now, but it can be also done even in a single sentence, but don't make it too big, and because it carries 2 marks. How is the study of leprosy bacterium different from the study of other infectious organisms? You understand how leprosy is different from other kinds of diseases, because there is a kind of stigma. Once a person starts suffering from leprosy, he is or she is considered to be a person who has committed sin. What are the two approaches taken by IDRI to curb the threats of leprosy? I have already explained. First and second, there are two ways: diagnosis, then giving vaccine, and using antibiotics. So you have to, if you feel the necessity of using 2 or 3 points, then you have to make compound sentences. Now the two approaches, so apparently it seems that what about the two approaches, that how giving vaccine or identifying or a making diagnosis. So when you are talking about the approaches, then the answer may be big, maybe large. So in those cases, try to summarize 4, 5 or 6 sentences into 2 sentences. So that's a difficult task, but you have to try to do that. What, according to the author, is the most exciting breakthrough in IDRS war against leprosy? You have noticed what about the exciting breakthrough, and can you find example of blending of cutting-edge life science technology with a state-of-the-art communications technology? So you have also noticed the smartphone technology and the antigen and reagent. I have said these things. Do you think that the author is an optimist? Explain why or why not. Optimist means that someone who thinks that there will be positive result. So do you think that the author is an optimist? I think the author is optimistic, because he has expressed his optimism that we are going to eliminate leprosy very soon. Now, dear students, we finished lesson number 2 of unit 2, and this lesson was on leprosy. And I also showed you some questions. These questions have been taken from the text, and I said that once when you look at these questions, you have to read the passage again and again. It doesn't mean that all the time the entire passage or the entire lesson will be given. It doesn't mean that. Now, naturally, some questions may arise in your mind that I am showing you the questions and I am not telling you the answers. So you are expecting that if I would give you some written answers and give you some ideas that what could be the answer of these questions, then it would be better. Of course, I will give you what the teachers expect, that the students start first writing the answers. So you first write the answers of these questions. Definitely, we will discuss the answers of these questions, in our future classes. But before that, I explained, lesson 1 of unit 2, and now lesson 2 of unit 2. So I hope that in today's class that these questions you will practice at home, and in my next class when I will start, I will obviously, in the next class when I will start new lesson, I will explain and I will show you some examples that how the answer of questions can be written. At the same time, I will also start multiple choice question answer, and after doing that, I will start flowchart and then summary, the way how we can write a summary. I will also teach you those things, and there are other items as well. So the significant thing is that we have to read the lesson and we have to practice all these different types of items. So it's a big challenge for us, and we have started, and I hope that we will be able to continue and complete all these things in future. So till my next class, goodbye, stay safe and stay at home. Thank you very much.